proves we can't ever really know what's going on.
Appearances can be deceptive.
Tom, I was just speculating about a hypothesis. I know I don't know how.
Uncertainty. That is appropriate for matters in this world.
There, we're in a tight spot.
Welcome to Framework. I'm John, one of the hosts of Framework. With me, as always, the other host of Framework, Al. How are you, Al?
All right. Recovering from some illnesses. I believe there's been a lot of that going around lately.
Yeah, you could be better, you say?
I can't complain, you know.
All right, and joining us today for a conversation about A Serious Man, one of the weirder Coen brothers movies, I would have to say, is a man who needs and will get no introduction. Ronny.
Hey.
Ronny, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me during this quademic, as I believe they're calling it.
Yeah, is that because we're all sick?
It's flu, COVID, RSV, and rotavirus, I think, are the four.
Norovirus, I think, is one of them.
Noro? Is that what it is?
I believe there should be 3 more plagues to come, by my count.
Good. Very good.
I got it on the ground floor, one of the very first ones.
Is everyone sick right now? I certainly am. I got tested. No, nothing too serious. Just a real nasty viral flu. I mean, I might have got this from my daughter, or maybe it was punishment from an imperious god for doubting his existence. Who can say?
I'm waiting for the locusts.
But all of that would just be, as this movie posits, just part of the human existence, is that we are just afflicted and I guess just need to grin and bear it the best.
Or maybe nothing matters and there's no God, which, is also possible.
This is indeed part of the, I don't know, would you call this the Nihilist trilogy? With No Country for Old Men and Burn After Reading? I mean, it's pretty brutal. That's not doesn't quite fit. It certainly is cynical and unpleasant, and has a low opinion of being alive, as those films do. But this one kind of
slightly nihilistic.
Well, this one doesn't posit that nothing matters, just that you think you should know what matters. It's beyond
literally. That's about as Jewish as you can get. So if it is the nihilist trilogy, then this is the most Jewish of the 3, kind of both by default and actual applied philosophy.
Well, the thing that I try and resist most, and a battle I am constantly losing on this podcast, is jumping straight to the very ending of the movie in our opening remarks. But it is hard to resist in this case, especially, and I'll just say, we'll circle back to it, but my takeaway from the end of this movie is not nihilism, that there is no God, nothing matters. I think it is a fairly heavily indicated that there is a God, and it's an angry and vengeful one.
It's a Jewish God.
Yeah, kind of, right?
The god of the 60s is a Jewish God.
Yeah, he's got a nasty sense of humor.
Absolutely. This is often referred to, I think, even by the Coens, and it's a fairly easy leap to make, as an adaptation of the Book of Job, which is, it's got to be the most psychopathic book in the Bible, which is, not saying nothing. There's some competition there.
Come on!
Yeah,
that was my Job.
Oh, okay.
It was the damn it, the other Job. Yeah, it's like I don't know. It's the Serbian film of its day. It's sort of the Serbian gospel.
It's some goofy stuff. It has I know it's a parable, but the idea of God and Satan hanging out and having millionaire bets over people is very funny as well.
So are you saying it's more of a Trading Places?
Yes, honestly, it's a lot like Trading Places.
Yeah, but what I suppose what A Serious Man is missing is that framing device that tells you why these things are happening, why his luck has turned so bad. And this is all about just being, I guess, from Dan Aykroyd's perspective. And
have we just made this a Trading Places episode?
Well, okay, fine. We can recenter this on the Coens. I don't know if this is my favorite Coen movie, but this is the most Coen movie, I would say, right? If you had to point at one of their movies to be the Rosetta Stone for understanding the rest, this is definitely the one that I would go to.
it's really interesting to think of it in those terms because, I mean, I feel like we've been talking about the themes of this movie for 6 months now, talking about Coen brothers. This leads with Schrodinger's paradox. Well, not quite. First, there's a parable about Dybbuk's, and then Schrodinger's paradox as a lecture in college. And it's like, oh, this is the one that kind of explains it all and unlocks it all, which is, on the other hand, this is the movie that says, like, no, there's no explanations. This is the exact opposite of its goals in some ways.
But it's grappling with that so much more explicitly than a lot of the other ones, which we've talked about, all that being kind of implicit to trying to untangle the plot of The Big Lebowski.
This one deepens The Big Lebowski somehow. That was like this is like a point counterpoint with that film in some ways, and just accepting what the opening quote: "Receive with simplicity everything that happens to you." It's almost a Goofus and Gallant when you look at this and Lebowski together.
Yeah,
I appreciate a good highlights for children reference.
I mean, is this one where we need to go through the plot sort of point by point?
I mean, such as it is, I suppose. Well, let's start with the Dybbuk scene because it is separate from the film in so many ways, but it really sets the tone. It opens with a I don't know the period or the time. It's a Jewish folklore about an old man who may be just an old man, or he might be a ghost possessing
an evil
a
spirit.
Corpse. Yeah, and it is again sort of that Schrodinger's cat thing. He either is or is not, and is therefore both a Dybbuk, and it sort of ends in this sort of elliptical, just like, well, did we just kill an old man, or did we just stop the Dybbuk? And it's unclear. It's great.
Yeah, there's some people that seem fairly invested in the idea that this couple in this opening is the ancestors of our protagonist, Larry Gopnik, our modern day Job. And that explains sort of like the curse that has been laid upon him.
Oh, that's interesting.
500-600 years later. But is it? I kind of think it isn't, or that it is. That impulse to solve this movie in that way is so counter to everything the movie is saying about that impulse.
I was brought on, to my understanding, to be the Jewish voice in all of this. So I would say the original sin of Judaism is being Jewish. It's not about your ancestors insofar as it's about that all of them were Jewish. So I don't know that it matters, who they were.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if he's a direct descendant. Who cares? It's his ancestry either way. It's his culture that he's inherited.
And it does feel very much just sort of like the kind of movie that would have an unrelated parable to start it. They're kind of just having fun and being like, hey, it's sort of a weird folklore thing, a little bit of a Robert Eggers scene to open this off. This 1960s Midwestern set, sort of a social comedy. Yeah, why not do this? Yeah,
and then it throws another modern day, random parable in the middle too.
Right?
With the teeth.
Like the most infuriating thing. I really enjoy this sequence just on its own merits. It's a great little short film. I think it's hilarious to see Five-ish Finkel, who I don't know. Maybe I'm older than everyone, but I remember him on the Boston Public television show. I believe he was one of the teachers. He plays the Dybbuk. Call out to Five-ish Finkel with he's got a great name.
That is one of those names that I have to double check, because it sounds like if it's not his real name, then it would be a slur. It's so Jewish.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that was sort of his thing as an actor. He's going to be an extraordinarily Jewish presence in your film.
Yes.
Or TV
well,
show,
that's a heavy competition in this movie. We're going to have a whole probably 20 minutes on Fred Melamed coming up. That's going to be the highlight of this movie.
Colonel Sanders was pretty Jewish in this movie too.
Oh my God. Yeah. He was so much so that it took me a long time to get, why is this guy familiar? What do I know him from? And the last thing that occurred to me was Colonel Sanders from Spaceballs, of course. But if we're going to transition to the modern day from there, this is Michael Stuhlbarg's first big starring role. And I guess
his only, right? I mean, confirmed character actor at this point.
Men in Black 3, I think he was above the title there, right?
No.
Wasn't it him, then Will Smith, then...
I'm pretty sure Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones' contracts were pretty locked in to the Men in Black franchise.
Josh Brolin.
Who got to be above the title?
Jermaine Clement. How many more can we name that are above him in there? He's good in Men in Black 3. He's good in everything.
Excellent in everything. This is still probably his best work, I think, right? I mean, just because it's a starring role of a kind that does not come along very often.
I don't know. I mean, Michael Stuhlbarg, an incredible actor. This is a great performance. The character is limiting in a way, I guess.
That's honestly my perspective. I think it's one of those things. Let's put a line in the sand. I didn't enjoy having to watch this movie. There is a limit to how far it could go. It's a lot of incredulous, what? This is happening to me? Faces throughout the whole movie. So I didn't begrudge him as an actor. I agree entirely that there's only so far this character who literally is designed to be doing nothing. And that is part of the whole point and controversy, philosophically within it of, is that the problem? His inaction? There's only so much he's going to do. It's a lot of reaction, and that reaction is still within a limited range. So not acting, but character limitations to me to say it's an amazing performance. It's I don't personally feel comfortable going that far.
Oh, he has to find a lot of different ways to deliver the lines. What is going on? And I didn't do anything, but all within a pretty narrow range, but he has to do it a little differently every time. That's a challenge. I can't agree with you. It wasn't, because it struck me in 2010 in the theater. I was like, who is this guy? This guy's great. I'd never seen him before. And of course, since then he's been great in just about everything else I've seen him in.
I mean, yes, this is I would have a hard time saying this is the best thing I've seen him do, because he's so amazing in Boardwalk Empire.
I love him in Boardwalk Empire.
Yeah, he's amazing in Call Me by Your Name. I saw him on Broadway in The Pillow Man, which is a Martin McDonough play. He was with Jeff Goldblum and Billy Crudup. He walked away with the show. He was unbelievably good in that. It's one of the best stage performances I've ever seen. So that's kind of going to be hard to beat for me personally. But, it's really cool to see him as the lead in this. And I think he fits what they want this character to be exactly. Apparently they brought him in to play the guy in the prologue, the guy who finds the Dybbuk, just a real small role. And he was so good there that they was like, well, maybe let's bring him in for Arthur and for Larry. And they kept playing around with the idea of him for either role in this. And then they ultimately gave him the big lead, which, it's the sort of thing you can do when your movie costs a very low amount and no one expects it to make money, as is definitely the case with A Serious Man.
And I guess we've already kind of acknowledged his bona fides, but I do want to say that I think he would have been a good Arthur too.
Yeah, but you wouldn't put anybody above Richard Kind.
I wouldn't want to replace him, but if Richard Kind was too busy, out in LA with Mulaney, I'd say that's fine.
Richard Kind. Kind could have played Cy Abelman. He's sort of a real life Cy Abelman, I think.
I don't think I would have liked that. I don't think I would have bought that.
But I wouldn't want to lose the element.
He's not smarmy enough. He's such a smarmy character.
Yeah,
he would have to turn it up quite a bit. Fine. Let's jump ahead to Cy Abelman. Incredible performance. Fred Melamed is a fucking comedy treasure. I love that. Every time he just kills me doing anything or nothing. He can make me laugh. And he's somebody that once he's in a role, I could never want somebody else to take that role.
I would have been fine with Jeffrey Tambor.
No, absolutely
I could
not.
see that. I could see that, but it'd be a huge step down.
Why are you absolutely nodding? That's very strong.
Oh no, I don't know, Tambor.
Have you canceled Tambor? Is that why? Is this the problem?
Yeah, sure, why not? Yeah, you know what? I've canceled Tambor. How about that?
Yeah. I said, well, you know what, Jeffrey Tambor, once after you were 76, I have everything I need from you, and I can now comfortably cancel you.
No, that's a good instinct, though. I get that. And I mean, what I love about this is the biggest star in the fucking movie is Richard Kind. It's a bunch of unknowns. And this was my introduction to Fred Melamed. I remember seeing this and being like, "Who the fuck is this guy? This guy's amazing. This guy is terrific." And I think it still remains kind of his signature role in a lot of ways. One of my favorites, the Coen brothers character of the movie.
I was trying last night to read as much of the script as I could, and so I only got to the first rabbi basically. But it's remarkable how much the Cy Abelman description in the thing is. It describes him. So it's clearly written to Fred Melamed. It describes his body shape, like how he moves, his voice. It spells important as important when he talks. And it's just so exactly in his thing. Matt, a long time ago, John, you and I did a whole episode where we talked about the great comedy villains of all time. And one of them, one of the subcategories we talked about was like the sleaze. It was such an oversight for me not to include Cy Abelman as one of the great sleazes of all time.
He really is something. It's a running joke that everyone is, first off, knows who he is, and is like, when they find out Larry's wife has left him, they're like, "Oh, what happened? For whom?" And Cy Abelman. There's it's a constant joke that this is the guy who's cucking you. And the reveal that it's Cy Abelman, that he's 20 years older, looks like Fred Melamed, and this is his energy, this is his vibe, is honestly one of the funniest jokes in the movie when it happens. It's like, it's wonderful. That's him. Oh wow, it's great.
It's hard to say exactly what that reaction is, because I don't necessarily think it's like, with Cy Abelman, like, he's such an old, like, unattractive man, how could he be cucking you? I think it's more like, he's such a pillar of the community. He's such a serious man. He would never do something like that. Followed quickly by like, I guess if he's doing it, it must be okay. That's how I interpret it.
Oh, I think it's both. Sometimes one more than the other. It happens so often. Everyone kind of has a play on it. Adam Arkin is just like, really, Cy Abelman?
I really appreciate this dialogue I'm witnessing between you two Yentas.
Oh, please. Yeah.
But I didn't even know that one.
No, me neither.
I thought
is that a Barbara Streisand thing?
No, that's Yentl.
But it's the masculine form of Yentl, right? That's what.
Is it? I maybe in terms of, I don't know, etymology perhaps, but I don't think anybody's going, or Yenta is a gossip. So I don't think anybody's being like, hey, let's have the, masculine form of it.
Based on John and I's overwhelming masculinity. And
yes,
that's
makes sense.
Definitely
the way that we present. But okay, I got lots of Cy Abelman thoughts. He kills me in this movie so much. It amazes me that I don't know. I guess we haven't got enough Fred Melamed after this. He started showing up on TV more after this. But
he works.
Was he ever was he in more Coen Brothers movies after this? It feels like he should have been one of their go-tos.
Well, he's in the Fargo TV show, which is, it's close.
As is Michael Stuhlbarg.
Yeah, right. The third season. I don't think so, though. I mean, is he in? He might be in Llewyn Davis. I'm not sure, though. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't know. We'll find out. We're getting into the movies I've seen once, coming up. And so maybe he'll surprise us. And Hail Caesar, he could pop up in that quite reasonably. He's in WandaVision, of course. He's in every Craig Zoller film, oddly enough. Yes.
That is weird.
Yeah. He's great in Dragged Across Concrete, actually. That's a terrific role for him.
He was a great addition to WandaVision because he can bring surreality. And is a good bridge between comedy, and he's got a weird form of gravitas that feels goofy inherently.
What was it? There was a movie he was in that we talked about. It was a comedy.
We talked about, he was in the show Barry, the Bill Hader show.
Barry, maybe
you might have talked about that.
Yeah, it might have been that.
He's magnificent in the Maria Bamford Netflix show.
Yes,
Dynamite. That's
a good show.
Kind of doing a very Cy Abelman thing there. But okay.
He's amazingly malevolent in this. He's an intimidating figure somehow. I mean, even before the dream sequence when he's bashing him against the blackboard, yelling, "I fucked your wife, Larry," even before then, just when he's being completely soft-spoken and reasonable and friendly, he's so
He's
so
overwhelming.
aggressive. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, the way he invades the kitchen space
Mhm.
is just immediately off-putting.
Yeah, the Jolly Roger is eminently habitable, Larry. All of that. It's so insidious and it's so nasty. He's such a piece of shit in his asshole golf outfit, and it's
Well, if only something bad would happen to Cy Abelman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or is he? I mean, does this movie answer definitively? Like, do we? I don't come away with this movie thinking definitively. Oh yes, he was definitely sleeping with his wife the whole time and lying about it. At the end, there's a suggestion that Cy was the one writing the anonymous letters to the tenure board slandering Larry. But I don't think that's, again, in this movie especially, I don't think you can say much at all is definitively stated. It's always about embrace the mystery and so forth. So it's possible that he was not such a bad guy. He was, but
okay.
but I don't find that interpretation as much fun as the one where he is just a portly, elderly Jewish fuckboy.
I mean, that's the most fun interpretation of the role. But like, even if he's not emotionally, no, he is emotionally cucking Larry. Is the point?
I'm worried about my anonymity being disrupted here because that is my one of my Reddit handles. Fuckboy. So,
yeah, sorry to blow up your spot there.
Yeah,
I mean,
someone will put it together.
You could say that you could say that Cy is sort of this really malevolent devil figure in this, but Larry's wife really comes off as, I mean, like, even the evil interpretation of Cy is that he's playing the good cop to Judith's bad cop, and she is really like, I mean, it's a good thing these guys are such Jewish filmmakers, because if they were not 200% Jewish between them, this could be a really ugly. It would be
like a white comedian doing a Chris Rock routine.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a lot of empathy given to Larry's wife in this. That's for sure. And yeah, I mean, this movie definitely trades a little bit in stereotypes, I want to say. But it's usually, with purpose. And of course, it's explicitly Jewish by Jewish filmmakers, so they get away with that. Maybe a little less so with Clive Park and his dad, but no, even that is to a purpose as well.
It's leavened by the level of like detail.
Leavened?
Like,
is that the term you used?
Oh, very deliberately.
Yeah.
I think, but the amount of like autobiographical detail they bring to this whole setting, and it's just. Like, well, yes, there are things you could say they're stereotypical, but also they just feel intimate and like really minutely observed in a lot of ways. Even if, they're not breaking a lot of stereotypes, we'll say.
If you're going through the lens of nostalgia also, you're not going to have the specificity necessarily either, which then would get you toward the realm of stereotype potentially as well.
Yeah. But I think it's a kind of impossible role, Judah specifically, because she has to be completely impenetrable and incomprehensible in her hostility towards Larry for this whole conceit to work, of the divorce taking completely by surprise and being such a almost otherworldly smiting to him.
If only we could talk to Cy Abelman about how impenetrable she was.
Oh, yeah. But
well, they connected.
This
on
is not about
level.
whoopsie doopsie.
Yeah. That you buy, though, that they're very united for sure in kicking Larry out of his house and taking as much of his money as possible. I mean, that's the thing. Like, at the end of the day, it's this is all from Larry's perspective, and while I certainly buy the marriage wasn't going well, it is essential that he be pretty much clueless as to what the fuck is happening to him, and as such, so are we. Like she just seems, like a malefic figure as a result of all this. No, we're taking the kids. You have to move out. The Jolly Roger, it's eminently habitable. And and
because that's a reflection of his spiritual relationship with with God, and how he thought everything was going fine because he was, putting in the minimum required, Hebrew school, a good breakfast, the end. And it turns out that's not enough.
I would imagine there's an actual term or concept behind this, but I mean, it's maybe unreliable narrator, but it's not exactly that. But how much of this are we seeing through his eyes when we see his experiences?
Yeah, sort of a third-person limited perspective, whereas film implies an omniscient perspective, even when it's, some movies more particularly than others, like, say, A Taxi Driver is one that's very locked into one character's perspective, more so than A Serious Man. But I think A Serious Man still, particularly among the Coen movies, this one is locked into a particular protagonist pretty tightly. I don't know. I guess The Big Lebowski does that. Miller's Crossing kind of does.
Well, you also have the B story with the son, though.
That's true.
Which we haven't brought up at all yet.
It almost feels extraneous sometimes. I mean, I like all that stuff, but I'm just keyed in with what's going on with Larry, and to this point, I do think this is one of the more thematic films they've made that is sort of forefront rather than plot or narrative. Character, yes, but even that is in service of theme. This is a movie about ideas, and as such, it's sort of necessary. We're entirely in Larry's POV, to the point that yes, the stuff with the son, I'm kind of a little less. I'm kind of entertained by it, but it does feel like just sort of an extra thing that maybe it does kind of mirror their specific memories of being a child in the '60s in the Midwest and going to bar mitzvah and being stoned, perhaps. That feels like a very lived in moment.
Yes, that feels like one of them had that experience.
Narratively, the only thing to me that the son really adds is that the son's the only one in theory who gets anything remotely reasonable-ish or intentional from a rabbi. And also gets to meet the rabbi who he's been told to see and can't see and has tried to see and all of that.
Yeah, but I think what I take away from that especially is that what he gets from the rabbi that's useful is regurgitated Jefferson Airplane lyrics. And it's so unclear there whether the rabbi is deliberately and wisely choosing to speak to this boy in a language that he can hear to impart this fundamental lesson, or if he's just completely senile. And and that to me is something that runs throughout the Coen brothers filmography in different, in more subtle ways, but here it's very apparent to me. They're more front and center that there's this very fine line between the most profound spiritual wisdom and the most completely useless glib platitude. In order for something to actually be that profound and far-reaching and everything, it almost has to be so general as to be useless in your immediate circumstance.
And I think this comes back to the fundamentals of Judaism, which is God is unknowable and he's an asshole.
Yeah. So that's one way to it. Another way, I think that they deliberately include the Korean characters to connect it to Eastern spirituality. That when he says "embrace the mystery," as a part of a very earthly way of getting him to accept a bribe, but also it sort of ties the Jewish spirituality that the rabbis are selling with Eastern philosophies kind of end up saying the same thing too, about receive with simplicity, embrace the mystery. That's not all that different from what Rabbi Scott or Nocturne are saying.
That is such an interesting. It's an evocative phrase, and it is just sort of rattled off as part of no, just ignore the bribe, forget about it. It's fine. Just pass the kid, and yeah, it would also double as the the sort of thematic underpinning of the film. There's probably half a dozen phrases in this film that serve that purpose.
Mere surmise, sir.
I love that.
That's not the most thematic one, but I just like that.
It's amazing.
I mean, fundamentally, this is what annoys me about this movie, and I don't think either of you are going to agree with this comparison, but it's signs. And when I saw
when
I saw signs, and at the very end...
It opened up your eyes, and you saw...
It was, hey,
Sorry.
did you know that everything that the writer told you throughout this movie actually mattered? Did you know that everything was Chekhov's gun? I was like, this is not a message. This is not anything. This is not a twist. Like, the idea that the writers have chosen to have oblique things for people to analyze does not, to me, mean this is the height of intellectualism. Like,
Yeah, it does.
No,
We've talked about this actually on the podcast and through other routes, but how it is hard for a movie or a book, whatever, to present a truly like godless random universe because a film itself is intelligently designed. And like Signs is kind of the ultimate example of that. Is yes, Signs as a script is a piece of clockwork. That doesn't necessarily prove anything about the universe outside of the film Signs.
No, I mean, I believe that movie ends with it turns out his wife's dying words were instructions on how to defeat aliens, I believe.
Yes.
Totally.
And the instructions were,
That was
and
what
those
she said,
instructions specifically were hit him with a bat. Which, in fairness, would never occur to you. If not for the first previous 2 hours.
Amazing. Well, I mean, is this movie not about that in a way though? It is explicitly about like, maybe all this stuff is meaning that we impose on bullshit. Maybe this is all random, all happenstance, and we're just we're just so desperate for it meaning something that we're going to force it into meaning something that except the mystery isn't profound. It's just bullshit. And because we are desperate, striving for purpose, we're just gonna be like, well, I guess that's what it all means.
Or maybe it is the movie Signs, but also fuck you.
I don't know who you're speaking as. If you're speaking as you or the Coen brothers.
I'm speaking as Hashem, I guess.
Oh,
No, I mean this is what I think makes this a actually brilliant piece of art, is that it manages to have this fundamental thing both ways so successfully and so repeatedly across all these different iterations. And yeah, things can be very profound or maybe incredibly stupid. and maybe it can be Schrodinger's bribe, where it's either a bribe or defamation. But maybe not either.
Yeah, I mean that's what appeals to me about this is all the it feels like it's built for you to try to unlock and solve and connect the dots between Santana and Abraxas and the Mentaculus and the Goy's teeth, and try to come up with an overarching philosophy that is being presented here, and also making fun of you for doing that. That's cool to me. And I think it's a very human thing that I don't believe I've ever really seen extrapolated in a film or explored in this depth or with this effectiveness. And that's why I really respond to this one. And it's funny too, but it's just doing such a weird, unique thing that is, kind of intrinsically linked to all these other great Coen Brothers films in its way. But yeah, there's just nothing quite like this one.
Yeah, it's one of the most difficult things in art, I think, to wrestle with inexplicability to this degree and depth without coming up with an answer, without accidentally explaining the inexplicable, or just becoming incomprehensible gobbledygook.
in general, I shy away from anything with a Jewish theme. It does not appeal to me. I don't find it interesting. I was a huge fan of the OC. And part of the reason I was a big fan of the OC was because I enjoyed the world building. And I was like, oh, I felt like this world existed. And, you know, I didn't necessarily want to be in this world, but whatever. I don't like this world in this movie. I don't want to be around this world in this movie. And it's like, you know, I think those two things are what made me. So technically, acting wise, thematically even, I don't have any particular objections. I just like, it is not appealing to me and not a world that I wish to be around.
I would think that would make you more sympathetic to Stuhlbarg's character. Because he doesn't either.
Is this specifically the 1960s Midwestern milieu, or is it like the things they're they're wrestling with, and the sort of brittle transactional nature of all the relationships in this movie. I mean, or both. I suppose both make sense.
In terms of what turns me away and turns me off from it?
Yes.
It's
gotta be the latter. It's gotta be the latter, right?
I think both of you have kind of taken this movie and said, let's zoom out and look at it in an analysis fashion, which is literally what the point of your podcast is. But the idea of watching a movie or a show, or whether that's meaning Broadway or TV, and having some level of enjoyment beyond philosophical sort of analysis is something that, as I was, researching to figure out, was I the complete outlier in people who didn't like this movie? Because saying I don't get the movie to me is not really a good explanation for why you don't like a movie. But
no, I don't get that you didn't get the movie. I think you did get the movie.
No, I know, and that's what I'm saying. I think that there are plenty of people who go, I didn't like that movie, and you're like, what didn't you like? And I go, well, I didn't and then it's clear they didn't understand what the hell was going on.
Sure. Yeah.
For me, it's like I saw a subset of people who say there should be some level of enjoyment in some way, some level of connection in some way. Like, it's just not fun. There is nothing. I mean, both of you saw humor. I think the only way to have fun watching this movie is, and I'll go off on one other quick tangent. Breaking Bad is not a black comedy at every minute, but I think a lot of people missed how much of a black comedy that show really is. So if you like dark comedies and you can find enough checkpoints along the way to laugh during this movie, then so be it. I couldn't. So and I'm not sure there's a lot of other entry points for enjoyment during this movie.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I mean, yeah, I think I'll take your broader point, which is that, if I'm interpreting it correctly, you need to be able to accept the film with some simplicity in order to get to the broader themes.
Beautiful, yes.
You got to be able to enjoy it scene to scene on some level. And that, enjoyment is kind of a sticky term, because there are movies that are, Seven is not, it's hard to say I enjoy those individual scenes a great deal, but it is compelling in whatever way from scene to scene.
I mean, there's no reason to shy away from the fact that this is the least seen Coen Brothers film. It is probably the least successful financially intended, I'm sure, for the smallest audience of any of their movies. This is them, on the far edge of their sort of art house sensibilities here. They're not swinging for Big Lebowski or Fargo here. This is like, we won the Oscar. Let's make something very personal that we want to do.
I would only point out that I think both Big Lebowski and Fargo only became big, broad crowd pleasers posthumously.
The biggest star in this is Richard Coen.
Funny term.
Yeah, well, but Fargo has been canonized as this great film, but it wasn't we're gonna make one of these classic genre pieces. Yeah,
but it's
a pregnant cop in the frozen tundra of.
I mean, you can see a connection between what was popular at the time, Pulp Fiction, and Fargo. It seems to be a product of the '90s in that way. And I mean, look, they expected Hudsucker Proxy to be a big hit too. That was them swinging for the fences too. So I don't know that their sensibilities are exactly right there. They've never made a blockbuster per se. True Grit, kind of. That's the next one. But aside from that, and that one is what you do after A Serious Man, maybe. That's the movie you make once you've made your movie that no one will want to see. No one will nominate for Oscars. That is just going to be this weird personal thing. And yes, as you say, Ronnie, we kind of love to approach movies in this way. That's the purpose of this podcast. And it's sort of a field day for that.
But I think you were dead on that. For me, the thing that makes this go down good is that I find it pretty funny from scene to scene, and occasionally, very, very occasionally, but screamingly funny. Again, all of the Cyberman stuff kills me, but in particular, had to pause the movie to catch my breath. I think one of the just best jokes in all of cinema history is the cut after the car accident, or after he goes home and his wife's crying because I died, and they cut to him holding his hands in Adam Arkham's office, going, "I don't know. It seems like she's asking a lot, but somebody has to pay for Sai's funeral." That's like the funniest fucking thing I've ever heard. I'm sorry.
I mean, the gallows humor of this I find extremely funny. The just the fuck, what are you gonna do? Kind of like, I don't know. It's, I mean, I said it sort of feels like the Book of Job. It also feels like Ziggy a little bit. You know, you remember Ziggy?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, just sort of a
What
long-suffering
red-blooded American
little...
wouldn't? I'm pretty sure he was a Thanksgiving Day balloon.
Was he? That's great. Yeah.
I could be wrong, but
See, I wish there was more cultural footprint for a serious man. I don't know that we need a Macy's balloon for it, but you know, it'd be fun if Cy Abelman was, you know,
if
bit of an
Fred
archetype,
Melamed was the Grand Master of the parade in his blue on blue outfit.
In character, yes, of course.
Yes. Just on a float with a bag of golf clubs on his shoulder. Be great.
But it is, it's you know, it's sort of a Murphy's Law, kind of just like, shit happens. Kind of, like, I mean, it is a specific thing that is unique about it, and I do like that thing, though. You know, I've made this point already in this episode, but yeah, just having the sort of like, if anything will go bad, will go bad. You'll never understand, and you can die mad about it or accept it with simplicity. That's an okay thing to build a film around. Not every film, you know.
No,
I mean, I look, if had Captain America: Brave New World tackled some of these themes, I probably would have liked it more.
Maybe. I think it also helps if you can build out a film as expertly as these guys can.
Sure, I don't think many people could make this movie. That's true.
There is many more ways to fail at this than there were to succeed, and you need to be able, like, again, like there's just sort of structural jokes in this that I like, where he's getting high with his neighbor, and you know, he starts going like, "Is that a siren or whatever?" And she starts kind of going off in her explanation of, "No, it's just that sometimes it makes you feel kind of paranoid." "Oh shit, that is a siren." And then they get up and go, and they're bringing Richard Kind in. But yeah, I don't know. If we go back to, I guess, hardcore spiritual analysis, we should talk more about Richard Kind and what Uncle Arthur represents, and the burdens of intellect that come with the Mentaculus. This is just sort of
this is maybe the great Richard Kind role for me too. You know, he's this is just screams Richard Kind to me. And when I think back on this movie, I'm just like, oh man, yeah, Richard Kind and his neck cyst. And,
but it is very one note as a performance. I think he's gotten to do better things, and
perhaps
Spin City, really, like, more range.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that might be accurate.
But it's a perfect utilization of him. Like, yeah, I get that.
A profound loser brother here, and it's sort of in that way where he has a weird life that you're kind of only sort of privy to. Getting arrested for sodomy. He's a gambling genius. Suddenly turns out. We see the Mentaculus. It is nonsense. It is, you know, looks like the Notebooks from Seven. But
or is it the actual secret plumbing of the universe?
Yeah, or maybe he figured it out.
It works.
He's using it to win at gambling, and in the cruelest act of the film, doesn't know what to do with the money, even as he is crashing in his brother's couch. So he gives it to his nephew. I would kick him out after that, personally.
But in terms of the Coen brothers themes that we're talking about, this is such a direct articulation of what I've been blathering about all along, which is how the Mentaculus, knowing the blueprints of the universe, provides him no relief. You know, he's in other terms of, like, you know, getting the signals from on high. There's the whole scene where Larry climbs onto the roof to fix the satellite antenna, and it gives him this broader perspective on his neighborhood, and you know, a clearer signal of these messages from on high. And when he turns the antenna a minuscule fraction to the left, you hear like a Hebrew cantor singing what is, I guess, the Torah. And then he turns a little bit to the right, and it's the theme from F Troop. So, like, you can have the same celestial message communicated through high art religiosity or this lowbrow pop culture thing. And that's sort of, you know, it's either the most profound thing in the world or it's the stupidest thing in the world. And it's might actually be the same message either way.
The key moment with Arthur for me is when he has his little one of his, I think the biggest of his emotional breakdowns, and he's when they're living at the Jolly Roger at this point, and he just goes screaming, weeping, sitting in the empty concrete pool, and he's crying to God about his lot in life, and Larry comes over trying to get him back in bed, and he's like, he's like, well, he gave you a family, he gave you a job. What has this Shem done for me? And it's like, Larry's fucking miserable, and he has none of these things really anymore. Or, well, I guess he's got the job. I was shocked he got tenure, honestly. The only thing that happens goes his way in the film. But that's a compelling moment because it's either how little we see each other, how little we understand one another, how completely focused we are on our own plight and our own suffering that we kind of miss everything else going on with everyone else. No one gives a shit about Larry in this film. Absolutely no one gives a shit about him. Or on the other hand,
there's his friend at the lake that gives him a little bit of advice, and she seems to be genuinely
fair. Okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, doesn't change anything, but on the other hand, actually, Arthur's life is worse. Arthur actually is more cursed than Larry in a way. He doesn't have the job or the family. He's got useless things that should make him special and don't. And he's got a cyst on his neck that he has to drain, and he is a burden on his family.
The useless things he has are all the answers to how the universe works. That's the thing. Like he said, what did Hashem ever given me? Well, he gave Arthur all the answers that Larry's tortured by not having, and he gave Larry the family and the social position that Arthur is tortured by not having. And it seems like you see why Hashem throws up his hand at some point, says, you people are never happy. Here's a tornado. Fuck off.
Okay. Are we? We got to talk about the ending, but I don't know. What do we got to clear out first? We're the three rabbis. I think we got to clear some time for the three rabbis here. Just look at that parking lot. Simon Helborg from Big Bang Theory. Is he surprisingly really good in a lot of things?
No, because I've seen him do interviews on late night shows, and he could do a lot of really good impressions. He's a smart, capable guy. Yeah, I would like to see more of him.
Yeah, he might be the guy from that show that's secretly awesome, and should have a big, huge career. He's really great in Annette, a very weird movie that came out a few years ago. It's a musical with Adam Driver and I think Marion Cotillard and him. Weird movie, really good. He's great in it.
I can only speak to this, where he's perfect in this for this role.
Just look at that parking lot.
Yeah. Huh. Which, again, is actually the most profound bit of wisdom, I think, in this entire movie. The idea that parking lot is a fucking miracle if you actually can think about it properly and look at it in the proper context. And yet it feels so inane coming from this guy.
Well, it is useless advice, ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, unless it's just change your perspective, I guess.
Yeah. It's accurate advice, but it gets you no closer to actually doing it. Implementing it's the hard part.
Which is the same as the Goy's Teeth story. And Rabbi 2. Rabbi Menchek? He's Rabbi 3.
Yeah. Not during his Rabbi 2. And that's Colonel Sanders from Spaceballs. And that one I find even more useless because the lesson of that story is literally, whatever.
Don't ask.
Don't think about it.
Yeah.
Helping others couldn't hurt. I want a little bit stronger of an endorsement of the concept of helping others, maybe. If you're not going to offer anything else, you could, at least for other people's sake, encourage them a little more on that front.
I do love that this is set up as such a set piece of a parable that's going to be, one of the memorable parts of the movie, and it comes to nothing. It's just this. I mean, there's probably 30 to 40 insert shots here of Sussman trying to figure out what the rabbis, what the Goy's teeth mean, and it just results in and he never found out. That was it. Except it does resolve, I guess, in that he stops thinking about it, which is not really framed as the moral, but it is, I guess, ultimately the part that Larry can't hear is that he just just stops thinking about it. He accepts the mystery and goes on.
Yeah, I guess that he embraced the mystery is the same. I mean, I feel like every lesson here is presented to Larry from two different directions. And, embrace the mystery and whatever, and not what Natron's saying is basically the same thing. Neither of which seems very useful to him, ultimately.
I don't know. Ronnie, what's your favorite of the rabbis?
Favorite in what context? I mean,
any one you like.
Which scene is better to
no,
watch?
I mean, I'm not trying. It's more of a rhetorical Jewish question. I'm not actually asking. I mean, like, they all have their own sort of thing. I don't buy so much that there is ambiguity with Marshak. I mean, he gives back the 1960s iPod, it is a moment of connection. I don't buy that he does that out of senility, that he's like, what's this thing? Is it yours? Whatever. There seems to be some sort of attempt to bridge something with that kid. So yeah, I think there's enough evidence there because he gives him back the thing and the quote where he's like, I know this is going to mean something to you. In some ways, you talk about fuck yous, like, this kid's not looking for any wisdom. And I think he got something that was appropriate and applicable for him at this time in his life for who he was. So,
yeah.
Well, the simplicity of what he wants is maybe what makes that possible. He wants the Walkman back. That's his goal for the movie.
Yeah, he's who he is at that point is stoned out of his fucking mind, and maybe that he is stoned enough to accept things with simplicity in that moment. And I think there is a broader, like the whole bar mitzvah sequence where he is just reeling and looking around and so confused. And they see his stoned friend in the audience just slow blinking with like totally wide eyes. It's like, that is all very funny to me on the surface, but also it's like, yeah, maybe getting super duper stoned is the only thing that actually lent that, important Jewish rite, the actual like mystical weight to him that it's supposed to have to him. But maybe stoned sober, it wouldn't.
So this
have
is
done
a
anything
pro-pot movie, is what I'm hearing. This is Coen Brothers Cheech and Chong movie.
It is. Big Lebowski is more of a Cheech and Chong movie, but
yeah.
I don't think this one comes out against pot in any way.
On the whole, I'd say they're pro-pot filmmakers.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm being entirely flippant on this. I think the argument is basically that he needed to be under the influence of, or the possibility that he needed to be under the influence of some sort of substance to be able to actually get what he needed out of life. Like that's pretty pro-substance. I don't think it is a flippant sort of thing. I mean, from my perspective, a bit of a strange message. If that's how this kid got, what he needed out of life was because of marijuana, like that's a little odd.
I didn't say gave him everything he needed out of life. Just that
that moment though, it
gave the ritual a weight and significant, or I don't know, significance is even the right word, but he engaged with it differently. And I think he appreciated even the rabbis next to him who are guiding him when he's too stoned to actually read the text. And helping along, it even like made him appreciate the Jewish community there a little more. But I don't know. I just say it was that experience is going to stick with him longer in a probably more profound way than if he had been stone sober and just got shuffled up there, got la 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 la, sung his portion and sat down and forgot about it.
I don't know. The kid seemed so out of it that I wonder if he's going to remember anything that happened during that sequence.
Oh, well, it could go either way, wouldn't you say?
Oh my God! Yes, that's what this whole movie is, isn't it?
That's the beauty and the evilness of it is we can always just tell you to embrace the mystery.
Just look at that parking lot, Ron.
It's every answer and it's no answer.
It's great. That is a religious thing, though. An ancient religious thing, in fact, is to get high and see visions and have experiences. Like that's the Oracle of Delphi. That's that's part of it. That's how that thing works a lot of the time. So, there's even precedent in, I don't know, specifically in Judaism, but in human history. Oh, how broad are we getting here?
This is where this all starts feeling very arbitrary to me. The kid went and got stoned on his own. This was not an ayahuasca where there was a sage with him. Like, To say that it was a religious ritual, he did something in advance of a religious ritual, sure. But I mean,
they're not doing an ayahuasca transcendent
No.
philosophical journey here. I mean, I think it just sort of randomly turns into one a little bit, but not really. Like, it's also just a comedy scene. Like, this could easily turn into a cringe where he fucks it up, and it would be funny. You know, that could happen there. And it's.
But I think Ethan Coen, when he was stoned at his own bar mitzvah, did make it through.
Yeah.
And then he went and had an encounter with this decrepit old rabbi that was kind of scary to him. And that clearly stuck with him because now they've included that scene in like half a dozen movies, including Intolerable Cruelty randomly.
Right. Another thing to point out in this, the thriving world of divorce litigation once again appears in this film. Theme they love. Turns out
they mentioned Tuckman Marsh, which is the law firm from Burn After Reading. Ronnie, if you wanted to cite, you never said your favorite rabbi, but I would let you say the Adam.
No,
Arkin
I did. I said it was Marshak because I.
Oh, you did. Okay, yeah.
I said that, and it was. It's my belief that he really was making a connection with this kid.
Okay. I was just saying we could include Adam Arkin as a sort of secular alternative to the rabbis.
Adam Arkin is possibly the most famous person in this movie, arguably.
Possibly, he might nudge Richard Kind off the third tier pedestal that he's barely clinging to there.
He's got one of my other favorite like subtle jokes or not exactly subtle jokes, but just not exactly set up punchline A to B jokes, but where he asks Larry how he's doing as they're like shaking hands, and he's like, "Good, I'm trying." He's sort of regurgitating Rabbi Scott's deal, but I'm trying to do this as a fresh start and thing, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. And Adam Arkin just kind of looks at him and goes, "Really?" And then Stovall just kind of slumps and goes, "Maybe not. I don't know." I don't know why that kills me. The way he immediately it takes such a small puncturing of that for him to just completely deflate.
I think out of the whole movie, the Adam Arkin scenes were my favorite.
Yeah, okay,
that's cool. I get that. He's a good presence in this, and I wish, as another actor, I wish would do more with the Coens. He's well suited to it, and he's good in those scenes. I love the one with is that Michael Lerner showing up and dying? Yeah, that's great.
Yes, without speaking a word.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's really funny. I think that's hilarious. He's like, "Hey, we got a guy who's going to solve that property line dispute we've been having," and he shows up and just like dies. That's a great joke.
Yeah. It is. Of course, the person who's going to solve one of Larry's problems is going to just keel over dead the moment before he explains it. I'm just seeing like other random like connections to other Coen Brothers movies, like the Tuckman Marsh stuff. It struck me that Richard Kind has sort of the same affliction as John Goodman in Barton Fink, where he's got fluid leaking out of his head, which we couldn't quite make sense of there either. But there's a whole scene when Larry is, I think he's going to, or when he's with Rabbi Nocturne, or when he's with Adam Arkin, I forget who he's talking to, the moment where he's really flummoxed by the cosmic message that God's trying to send him with the car wrecks, his and Cy's twins car wrecks, which links him to, of all people, Anton Chigurh.
Well,
who also can't figure out how, if he followed all the rules correctly, he's still like a car wreck.
Well, that's another thing. Is that quantum entanglement? As they got too close, and then their fates kind of overline in that way, or is it just happenstance and means nothing? Yeah.
Embrace the mystery.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. I was going to say, in that case, I think probably happenstance, but also embrace the mystery is going to be the only real answer we're going to get.
Well, it torments Larry. He's just like, does that mean anything? It happened at the same time. Nah, it means nothing, probably. Or maybe. Who knows?
We always have to check in with our nemesis figures in these movies. So we've got Mike Fagel, the little Jewish loan shark in the Hebrew school that's chasing Danny around. I mean, I almost feel like you're asking, like, does Danny stuff need to be in this movie to the extent it is? It almost feels like it has to be so they can include that because it's such a staple of theirs at this point that you have to be being pursued by sort of almost otherworldly figures of retribution.
I hadn't made that connection. I mean, he's so mortal. You know, the
Well,
part
except
where
they make a point to like never show his face until the final shot, and he never speaks. He just, just comes out of the door in the background and starts running. Like, I mean, he runs, so it's not like it follows. But
well, he also gets winded and can't continue the chase at one point.
yeah, well, I point you again to Intolerable Cruelty and Wheezy Joe. That's not unprecedented either.
The finest of Nemesis figures, Wheezy Joe. Yes,
Of course.
Okay. Well, no, that's fun. Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying it's the best or most compelling, but it's definitely in
it's
that
there.
category.
Okay, I accept.
The other category is the debt collection aspect, where Larry. This is why I'm saying this is the Rosetta Stone. It includes the most Coenisms of any movie because it has a Nemesis figure in a story that doesn't seem to cry out for that. And it's got the really direct version of the debt collection phone call thing that I've been harping on with the Columbia Record Company hounding Larry about these things. And it ties that into the religiosity stuff really well, too. I think the idea, Larry insists that actions have consequences in his office. But I think what this movie is also kind of pounding is that inaction has consequences, too.
Totally.
His refrain that he didn't do anything doesn't mean he doesn't owe the Columbia Record Company money. And,
that's how they got
work that up to Hashem. Colonel Sanders explains that the obligation runs the other way. You're born in debt to the Jewish God, apparently.
So, speaking of the Jewish God, the end of this film, probably the thing most people remember when they see this movie.
The few people who've seen this movie.
The few of the
proud.
The odd
watchers.
Couple thousand people who've seen The Serious Man.
This is not that unpopular of a movie.
No,
Everybody
it's not
who's
unpopular.
like a movie fan of any stripe has seen it at some point.
Oh, I would like that. I think this is the last one most people get to, but it's one of the better ones. I think. Anyway, the ending though is what you come away being like, well, that's fuck, that's a lot. It's really hard not to take this as the hand of God, right? I mean, it feels like he's being punished for a trespass at the end here. Certainly. Or maybe not, of course, but mostly yes. It feels like his actions have created cancer cells in his body retroactively or something like that. It seems to be what is going on here. The second he decides to go back on his morals, I guess, to change Clive's grade to passing, he gets a call from his doctor, from the who he was at the first scene in the movie, and it's like, it sounds very bad. Is what they go out of their way to make it sound awful.
He won't tell him anything over the phone.
Yeah, I've cleared out the office. Yeah.
By the way, saw the doctor at the opening of the movie, and during which time the doctor was offering him cigarettes in the office while they're going over his earlier test results, which I think I mentioned is because it shows that if the rest of this movie is all about like the limits of religion in providing us answers, it suggests that science does not have everything firmly under wraps and have every answer ready to go either at this point.
Yeah, well, the point is no one knows anything. Yeah.
Right.
But it will be on the test.
You didn't mention the tornado, though.
Oh, well.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Getting there.
But that's it. Oh, you're right. You didn't mention one of the most important lines of the entire filmography, which is him laying out Schrodinger's cat and saying that this is the uncertainty principle. It proves we can't ever really know what's going on. It's the opening of our theme music. And then he follows that up as the bell rings and everybody's filing out by saying, but just because you can't know what's going on, even though you can't know what's going on, you will still be responsible for it on the midterm, which brings us to the tornado, I think, fairly directly.
Yeah. Is the tornado the same divine judgment going on here?
Yes.
Or they just live in the Midwest and there's tornadoes sometimes?
I think the timing makes it really hard to say it's all a coincidence, but of course it's not entirely clear. I mean, you can't say definitively. If it would be so much easier if it was definitive that taking bribes leads to tornadoes.
Yep, that would be great, huh? If it worked that way, but no, it doesn't. It's just going to be unclear. Sometimes there are dire consequences for going back on your word, or compromising your ideals. Sometimes, you're Elon Musk or whatever, and there aren't. That's just the nature of things, and you don't like it. Well, that's too bad, and that's what makes this film feel so deeply cynical. The sort of disproportionate doling out of judgment, and
don't do anything. That's a bad choice. Do something bad. That's a bad choice.
Anything you do is going to make it worse, but also doing nothing is it's a bad choice too. I mean, that's a very strong through line through Coen Brothers movies. They are not big bootstrappers. Anybody who takes action to improve their lot in life in any of their movies makes things worse for themselves.
Yeah, we talked about this in like stuff that doesn't even really have that reputation, like The Man Who Wasn't There. That's what that movie's about.
That's their least seen movie, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, ooh, that's tough. I mean, that one has movie stars and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, but this came after No Country when they had had a renaissance.
That's true. That's true. That's tough. I don't know. What do you think, Ronnie? Have you seen The Man Who Wasn't There?
I did. Well, but I don't think I'm a great. I don't see anything. I see nothing these days, but I saw more then than I see now.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, again, the thing I want to harp on one more time is just how incredibly put together this movie is to hit these themes of maybe nothing meaning anything so hard. Like this tornado, like I said, it's kind of hard not to interpret it as the wrath of God, but it leaves a little bit of space open to not do it that way. And I think it's also really important that like this ending is the most striking part of the movie, like you said. And in order for this movie to not just trail off into kind of a shrug of nothing, it needs to end on one of its most striking note. And I think more generally, it's really impressive to me how this movie without a lot of real plot, there's like no murder or crime or whatever to drive a lot of plots. It builds pace and intensity as it goes, just by like kind of making the editing harsher and more abrupt as it piles on incidents and inconveniences on top of the protagonist over and over again. It does feel like there's a build here, even though we're kind of explicitly denied a climax.
I mean, I guess when it comes to old time religion, sending the hurricane and to take someone's son is very much an Old Testament kind of thing. It's like, oh, you transgressed? Well, nature will destroy your family. That's the sort of thing that happens, for, I don't know, you thought the fatted calf was a good idea. Fuck you. So it's all of a piece.
It's an Old Testament thing. I don't remember if it's the Book of Job specifically, but God speaking out of the whirlwind to express his anger is definitely from one of those books. Either, part of the trilogy.
So that feels explicit. And yeah, it's hard to shake that off. And yeah, it does. It gives the movie a fucking ending. That's for sure. Yeah. It is the injustice of it kind of is the thing you take away though, right? Or is it, or do you be like, well, you shouldn't have given that guy the grade. I guess he deserves what he gets. I don't take it that way. It's a transgress, I suppose. But is it just out of laziness and pure just like, I don't want to deal with this shit anymore. Here, he gets a C-. Oh, well, you should have dealt with it. Because his life does not seem to impart that lesson. But again, is that lesson wasn't necessarily the point of your life? Does that matter?
This also to me is that sign syndrome that I feel, where it's how do you write this movie? What are you trying to convey? You go, okay, doing stuff, not making choices is bad. Making bad choices is bad. The whole point of the movie is going to be that things are going to be ambiguous. So we're going to make it seem like there's a good chance something bad is going to happen because of it. Like, it just all feels like you can't play arbitrary when you've written all this. You can't play divine intervention when you are God because you wrote it.
I disagree. I think that this is one of the few examples of somebody pulling that off by leaving the right spaces open to interpret it as a completely arbitrary and godless turn of events.
All right, if the point is that God is arbitrary, that this is arbitrary, I mean, isn't that how you would have to write it? If that's what you're going for, wouldn't it have to be sort of oblique and difficult to connect?
I feel like we're having this conversation both ways. Did we not just agree that God is punitive and that is what is happening here? That God is punishing them at the end? Or him?
Seems that way, but like it's also
Probably.
yeah, it's probably what's going on. But at the same time, this is not the lesson he's been like. It has not really been on our radar that the great moral test of Larry Gopnik is whether he's going to change this kid's grade or not. You know, that's something he's been dealing with. It seems a little bit silly and frivolous, and is like more of an irritation than anything else. I mean, we kind of assume the kid's writing the bad pen letters to the tenure board. Turns out he wasn't even doing that, probably. But it's this sort of innocuous one part of the quilt thing that ends up being the biggest decision of his life, maybe, is I think the point of it. And that is and that sort of uncertainty, which is what the movie's about, is baked into this decision.
But to answer Ronnie's question from earlier, like, were we just saying that the conclusion here is that God is punitive and arbitrary? And I think more we're arguing is
not arbitrary, punitive. I don't think it is arbitrary. Like it seems very deliberate. He did an immoral action that was clearly the whole thing is that this guy has morals, whether they're internal, societal, whatever, that have made him decide that this is a bad choice of action. It's the wrong thing to do. He fights against it, and then he gives in. So I wouldn't call it arbitrary.
Well, what I was going to say is that I think what the conclusion I was drawing is what this movie is saying is that God is punitive at best. Because the alternative is that it's nothing, and there is not even a framework under which these things are judged. But I think you're totally right. I mean it's a question of perspective, as Rabbi Scott taught us, and Rabbi Scott's kind of vindicated in this ending because he says earlier that God is in the parking lot there, and so the movie ends with the whirlwind in the parking lot. But it also there's another shot there where the foul-mouthed friend of Danny, who's constantly cursing throughout the movie, he looks up and says, "That fucking flag is going to fly right off," and you see the American flag about to tear off the flagpole, which suggests to me that the cost of lowering our moral standards will be borne on a national level by the younger generation. But maybe that's just because it's where my head's been at lately. There is another totally different way of taking this lesson, I think, because it's matters of perspective, is one, Larry endured the trials of Job, right? And then things had started to turn up for him. He got tenure. His wife was open to reconciling. His son had a nice bar mitzvah, and everybody was happy with that. And it seems like the storm has passed. And that's rather than learning the right lesson from this, which is if you endure and stay on the higher path, your woes will eventually subside. He then, when things are easier, that's when he compromises. Yeah. And then that's when God steps in and says, okay, you thought that what I was doing earlier was bad. That was childhood. That was inconveniences, because you always had your kids and you always had your health. And I never fucked around with those things that are actually important. And now I'll show you what bad actually is. Arthur tried to tell him those were the important things too. And so that could be the lesson.
I like that very much. I mean, I like the end of the movie very much. It's so compelling.
Well, it's very cinematic at the very least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it does. Like it ends the movie with an exclamation point, which is not how this movie feels like it's going to end. There's there's the mythic actually like arrives at the end, which is kind of not what you expect. Even with the Dybbuk in the beginning, it feels very terrestrial.
How would you have felt if the sky opened and Cthulhu and the old ones decided that they would come and impose their judgment on the Midwest Jewry?
Pandered to.
This is one of the rare films where that would probably have made the film less good. Most of the time I'd want that. But in this case, that I don't know, that would compromise a lot of the ideas that have been set forth already. Perhaps.
I believe that was the alternate ending of the Nanette movie you were talking about.
It's not too far off, actually.
Actually, I think the final thing we have to talk about here is the actual very final end of this movie, maybe the best joke in the whole movie, in the end credits at the very end, there's a little note that says, "No Jews were harmed in the making of this film."
Yeah. Very cute.
Yes.
So I don't know. I mean, look, I get that this one is kind of a fan favorite only, this is not going to be, this is not going to touch people in the way that a lot of them do. Oh, Amy. Sorry, my daughter's on my lap here. This is not going to be Big Lebowski. This is kind of, advanced levels of Coen nerdery required for this one. And even then, may not really vibe with it. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I think
not
this one
just
has
nerdery,
funny.
but kind of what Ronnie's identifying is there's also like a level of hostility.
Mm-hmm.
I think it requires a certain sense of humor to endure this movie that I think I brush against. Again, I didn't not enjoy any of it, but I didn't have enough kind of grab points to find this an enjoyable experience. And again, the term enjoyable, I think we're using as a placeholder for something else. Compelling, I think, was one of the alternative ones.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, could that not just be a description of life?
I knew you were going to say that.
All right. Should we, I don't know, any final thoughts here?
No.
Serious Man.
No.
Okay.
One thing we have not learned from the Coens is how to end on our strongest note.
Hell no. Never do. All right. Thank you for joining us, Ronnie. Much appreciated. And, that's it for Serious Man. Okay. Next up is True Grit, the exact opposite of this film. All right. We'll talk to you later, Al.
Thanks for having me.
I was just speculating about a hypothesis. I know I don't know nothing.
Uncertainty. That is appropriate for matters of this world.
There, where the ties back.